Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to take a look at the Destiny beta on the PlayStation 4. Now, I did my alpha coverage a while back, and we got to look at essentially what, some of the core elements of Destiny were going to be. And it appears that the beta, which is now available on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and soon to be available coming the 23rd of July on the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, isn't really about so much of showing us new content as it is about continuing to test and stress the game and figure out balancing issues here and there. While we do have some new content, there is some new PvP maps for us to explore, and there also seems to be a new mission that is currently unavailable to us on the moon, which is of course one of the places that we'll be able to travel. But we're going to take a look at my experience from levels 1 through 8. I want to break down how I feel about the beta, and of course there are some changes to it, most specifically aimed at actually integrating storytelling into the beta. This is something that has been really absent from Destiny in previews that other journalism outlets have done. They've always talked about, well, where's the story? Where's the story? And we're slowly starting to see pieces of that. Now, of course, the beta starts off with you creating your character, and then you're thrown into a bit of a cutscene. We see some guys move to Mars, and they discover something. Next thing you know, it's, okay, we're there, and we see our little ghost, of course, voiced by Peter Dinklage, scrubbing around what seems to be a destroyed highway of humanity outside the walls of old Russia. He then stumbles upon your character, the Guardian, and brings you back to life, and you end up escaping from the Fallen to make your way back into the city after capturing a ship. There's a lot of cool touches thrown into the small story elements here, and of course it's all done in typical wonderful Bungie pacing fashion. So probably the really nice touch out of this whole thing for me, it may seem so small, but when it's a game about FPS where you're shooting weapons, this is a really noticeable thing. The weapon that you end up finding, that your ghost, Peter Dinklage, ends up helping you find, we're just going to call him Ghost from now on, no more Peter Dinklage, helps you find, is this sort of old worn out M4 type looking carbine. And I thought that was just a really nice touch, a really nice throwback to modern, firearms, and it was just very fitting for some reason. And eventually you stumble upon your ship and you actually make it out and you head back to the city. One of the most noticeable things about the hub, about the social hub, the city now where the Guardians hang out, at least for me, was that there's more activity going on. We have more vendors that seem to actually be discussing and talking, the different factions, the PvP factions, the Vanguard factions. They're actually talking about things that are probably relevant to the story in the game. I heard a couple of the factions discussing some sort of a monarch somewhere, and I actually became very interested and found myself standing around just listening to what they had to say because I wanted to know more. So again, we're pushing more for that living, breathing world inside of Destiny. And the game is still doing a fantastic job throwing players into your instance. This was something that I still found happening. 3 of my friends, we'd be headed out to some, mission. We're about to take down the level 6 dungeon. And on our way there, we're still, while we are in our own mission, we have a set task, and eventually we will enter an instance where no one else can join us. We are still thrown into the live map, meaning that we still end up meeting up with other fire teams. So we were actually able to push into the Devil's Lair, at least the outside of it, the exterior, into the actual instance zone with a total of 6 people. And it just feels so natural. One movement you're moving on, next thing you see, hey, there's 3 guys over there, you throw a wave up at them, hey, and you run in and you all take down all the baddies together and then push your way into the instance. Now, one of the things that they've done with the instance is to sort of mark the idea that if you all die, you start over, is that the darkness. Now, they talked about the darkness in the story before, and we start to see a better idea of what this darkness is. In fact, there are actually these giant ships that are super creepy that darken the entire sky, and it is just this wonderful visual effect. And they stroll on in and they start shooting these dark orbs that spawn these knights and these thralls, and they come in such large numbers. And it's very intimidating, and it's, of course, very well done. And I think the dropship, for me, has sort of been like a benchmark, of Bungie games. When you thought about the Covenant dropships back in the days of Halo, now we have these big, monolithic-looking, black, terrifying things that just bring darkness. And this darkness, is one of the main, evils that is hunting the Traveler and, of course, the rest of humanity in the world of Destiny. And I found it very interesting that we got to see a little bit more of that. But essentially, this darkness is what prevents you from being able to respawn inside of an area. So when you're playing in a fire team, you have to have a really big focus on making sure that, oh, there's 2 guys down, I'm the last one left, I didn't realize and I died. And now it's game over and you have to go and start again. In terms of difficulty, you can now play each of the story missions on 2 different difficulties. So there's normal and there's hard. Hard ramps it up about 2 levels. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and take down enemies that are 2 levels ahead of you. It is very possible. Of course, it's just going to take more time, but for someone who's playing the game for the first time through with a group of friends, maybe you want the most difficult experience. It is totally there. And also, of course, that adds that replayability where you can go back and say, let's go do that set of missions again, but now on the hard difficulty, because we're a little bit more matched with that. Difficulty-wise, the game does actually feel a little bit harder. Now, some of the things that I attribute to that is, number one, when I first played the alpha, it was my very first time playing the game and I had to get comfortable with it. Now I'm a little bit more skilled. The game comes a little bit more naturally. I understand my abilities, playing as the Titan class specifically, and I can be more effective. But I still had a pretty hard time. They've definitely increased the difficulty. The enemies there seems to be a much wider type of a variety of enemies as well, ones that I didn't recognize from the alpha. I could have just been mistaken, but we saw more stealth type enemies that had sort of dual katana setups that would actually charge you in numbers. The thralls seem to come in much larger numbers, and the dreg as well, and they seem to rush you in much quicker succession. So the difficulty increase definitely seemed to be there. Now, in terms of content that's available to us inside of the beta, as I said, there is a mission that is available over on Mars. It's level 6, but for some reason we can't yet access it. The level cap is still 8, which is what it was in the alpha. So I don't know Bungie's intentions. Bungie is a studio that doesn't like to give away everything before a game comes out. A lot of games will release a beta and you end up experiencing like this huge chunk of the game, but usually that's okay because it's a multiplayer only focused experience. Here inside of Destiny, it's this infusion of story and multiplayer, so for them to just start giving away more and more of the story, I feel it's something they don't want to do. And for some reason, I'm still convinced that Bungie has some tricks up their sleeve, a lot of things that they're hiding from us that we're going to get to experience once Destiny goes live in September. But one of the things that I was able to spend a little bit more time with was the PvP aspect of the game, which I found to be really, really exciting, actually. Now, when I played it in the alpha, a lot of people saw my footage and I looked at it and said, you know, it just feels so inconsistent, you're not getting solid kills. And I completely wasn't ready to accredit that to the game being imbalanced or, you know, not making any sense. I said, no, I haven't had enough time with the multiplayer, that's why. That's just pretty much how every multiplayer experience can go. When you pick it up for the first time, you're going to do terrible. You need to spend time in the game, you need to understand the map layouts. A lot of those things affect the flow of combat and your success in an FPS. That's just how competitive FPS works. So I got to spend a little bit more time with it, and I'll have some footage for you guys here. And one of my new favorite maps was this new map on Venus, called, I think it's Mon Vat, something like that. But it is this really lovely, organically rich environment. Venus is essentially like the gardens of life for the humans when the Traveler shows up and creates the Golden Age. And it's so lush, and the detail in Destiny, I have to say this, is beyond anything I have seen in a game before. Like, to me, this is the best looking game I've ever seen. It beats out Crysis, it beats out anything else I have ever experienced. Now, of course, we can say games that we've seen footage of, but I'm talking about games that I've played. I've played, you know, Crysis, I've played those games. Destiny is just awe-inspiring. It is absolutely breathtaking. When you look at the level of detail on the characters, the texture work blows me away. I've never been able to recognize different textures so obviously in a game before. I mean, you look at the pieces of armor, you look at the pieces of fabric, they all look like different materials. That is not something that commonly happens in a game. You know, you can say, developers can say, oh, you don't use this and it looks like that. The texture work and whatever technology is going on inside of the engine that runs Destiny is unbelievable. And I'm sorry, but if I sound like a fanboy right now, I don't care, because I am completely blown away by how good this game looks. And it's insane. I've sat there and I've stared at the gear and I've just sort of drooled over it because it looks that good. And the rest of the game matches, you know. I've just really genuinely enjoyed my time with the beta. I'm hoping that when the 23rd comes in July, we get to see maybe that final mission over on the moon. I would really like to go to the moon. I would like to see, you know, what it's like and see a slightly different environment. Very, very excited for that. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about that I got to spend a little bit more time with was the sort of leveling system for individual weapons and gear. This was something that was available to us in the alpha, but it wasn't really something I got to mess around with too much. For whatever reason, the gear just didn't seem to level as quickly. But essentially what happens, as some of you may or may not know, is that we can take a look at our different pieces of our weapons and our armor, and when we get something that is green or higher, so Destiny uses the standard sort of color coding system for an MMO for gear. So you have greens, blues, yellows, and purples. Or the other way around, green, blues, purples, and yellows. And each of these are considered weapons that have their own sort of leveling. So as you use them more and more, you'll be able to actually unlock special components for them. A sniper rifle might have multiple scopes, or maybe a special type of ammunition that goes with it. A light machine gun might have the ability to decrease recoil, or maybe to increase recoil, but to increase the fire rate. And then the same thing goes for your armor. You might actually have armor that provides a buff for using something like a scout rifle or a shotgun or even a sniper rifle. It might, give you an increase in your cooldown for your abilities. There's so much to go there that what they've essentially done is they're allowing you to create armor builds. It's a game where originally I thought, okay, we're just going to get armor, it's going to unlock, and we're going to level up, and we're going to use whatever is the highest valued piece of armor. But no, instead what we're doing is we're looking at the secondary abilities of these pieces of armor and saying to ourselves, well, that actually gives me a buff towards scout rifles. I'm running a really powerful scout rifle right now. Why not take that piece of gear, use it for a little bit, and level it up? And that piece of gear may be 10 or 15, armor value lower than something else, but that added benefit is going to allow you to create that build for your character that might just make the game, that might be better for you. It's all going to be about, a lot of theory crafting and coming up with these builds, and I like that added layer to an FPS. That is very, very awesome, and it has me very excited to see more of that and how that continues to grow as we level up. Now, one last thing that we got a glimpse of that sadly it doesn't look like we'll be able to mess with is at level 10, you're actually going to be able to unlock a secondary ability for your class. So for the Titan, you sort of have like your main set of abilities. That gives me the ability to do like a ground slam. Now if I look in my actual character menu, I'll see a second ability set that I can unlock that's called defensive. That obviously maybe has more of a focus on tanking and absorbing damage. So I'm interested to see just how many of those we end up having per class when the game goes live. And also, what the other character classes are going to have. So that's been my breakdown of the Destiny beta, guys. I plan on streaming some of it in the coming days, so keep an eye out if it's something you're interested in seeing. I'll be streaming it, as soon as I get the chance. I'm just super busy this weekend, but I will definitely be streaming it as soon as possible. We'll be streaming some of it on the Xbox One, I'm going to be starting a new character for the stream. We're going to be taking a look at a Warlock or a Hunter. Actually, you know what? How about you guys make that decision? I already have a Titan maxed out to level 8. So we have the Warlock and we have the Hunter as the two remaining classes that I can play. Cast your vote in the comment section below and let me know what you guys would like to see in the live stream. I'm also going to be throwing up some more PvP footage because I've really been enjoying it. I want to talk a little bit about the balancing of the PvP and how the game feels actually a lot like Halo, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. I know that may sound like a complete just loaded sentence that I just said there, but I promise I will make my explanation clear in the future. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any more questions about Destiny, any sort of feedback, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, and be sure to vote on what character class you'd like to see me level up in the live stream. I'll see you in the next one.
Enemy captured Zone A. Zone B lost.